I stood in front of my family, holding a document that could ruin them. For years, I paid their bills, fixed their problems, believed every "we need you." I thought I was the strong one, the one holding us together. Then I read the truth. Every dollar, every sacrifice was never love. It was a setup. They didn't just use me. They built everything on me. So tell me, would you forgive them or destroy everything? The room went silent the moment I stepped closer. No one spoke, but every eye followed the paper in my hand like it carried something dangerous. My fingers tightened around it, not because I was unsure, but because I finally knew. My mother forced a smile. "Emily, what is this?" I let out a slow breath, steadying myself. "You tell me." My father shifted in his seat, avoiding my gaze. My brother crossed his arms, already defensive. That was the first crack. They weren't confused. They were nervous. I took another step forward, placing the document on the table between us. It made a sharper sound than it should have, like a line being drawn. "I've been paying for everything," I said, my voice calm, almost too calm. "Every bill, every debt, every emergency." No one interrupted. Not this time. My hand trembled slightly as I tapped the page. So I started asking questions. A pause. Just long enough to let it sink in. My mother leaned forward, her voice softer now. "Emily, what are you talking about?" I met her eyes, and for the first time, I didn't look away. "I'm talking about this," I said, pushing the document closer to them. "The one thing you hoped I'd never see." Silence fell again, heavier, sharper. And suddenly, the only question left hanging in the room was, what's in that document? For a second, no one reached for the document. They just stared at it, then at me, like they were waiting for me to take it back, to laugh it off, to fix the moment the way I always did. I didn't. "I wasn't helping," I said quietly, the words slower now, heavier. My fingers curled against the edge of the table. I was being used. My brother let out a short, awkward chuckle. "What?" "Emily, come on, don't be dramatic." Dramatic. The word hung there, thin but sharp. My mother shook her head, her smile tightening. "We never forced you to do anything. You wanted to help." I held her gaze. Did I? A flicker. Just for a second. Then gone. My father finally leaned forward, his tone measured. "You're overthinking this. Families support each other." I nodded once, almost agreeing. That was the script. The same lines repeated for years. But something felt different now, like hearing a familiar song slightly out of tune. "So all those times you said you had no money," I continued, tapping the document again, softer this time. "That was real." No answer. Just silence, stretching a little too long. My chest tightened, not with anger, but with something colder. Doubt. I looked from one face to another, searching for something honest. Anything. And a question slipped in, quiet but impossible to ignore. Was everything a lie? The silence didn't break, it shifted. Subtle, but enough to feel. My mother's fingers hovered near the document, then pulled back, like touching it might confirm something she wasn't ready to face. My brother exhaled sharply. "If you have something to say, just say it." I almost did. For a second, the words sat right there, ready to spill. But instead, I leaned back slightly, giving them space, just enough to let the weight of the moment settle deeper. "It's strange," I said, quieter now, "how one piece of paper can make everything clearer." My father frowned. "Emily, stop talking in circles." "I'm not," I replied, meeting his eyes. "I just didn't realize how much I was missing before." A beat passed. Then another. My hand slid the document an inch closer to them, slow, deliberate. The faint sound of paper against wood seemed louder than it should have been. No one touched it. Not yet. "This," I continued, tapping it once, "isn't just a record. It's not just numbers or signatures." I paused, letting my gaze move across each of their faces. It connects everything. My mother's voice dropped. Emily, what are you trying to prove? I held that question for a moment, then let it hang unanswered. Let's just say, I murmured, one document changes everything. Another silence. Heavier now. Then I tilted my head slightly, watching them carefully. Would you even want to know the truth? For a moment, no one answered. And maybe that was exactly why my mind drifted back, far before the questions, before the doubt, back to where all of this really started. I wasn't always standing here like this. Once, I was just a kid trying to do the right thing. Growing up, being the oldest wasn't something anyone explained. It was something you felt. The small pauses before your parents spoke. The way their eyes landed on you first when something went wrong. Emily, can you handle this? My mother would ask, already knowing I wouldn't say no. And I didn't. I packed lunches when she was tired. Helped my brother with homework when he refused to listen to anyone else. Picked up extra chores without being told, because somehow it always felt like my job to keep things from falling apart. You're the responsible one, my father would say, almost casually. But it stayed with me. It shaped how I saw myself. At first, it felt good. Being needed meant being important. Every thank you, every quiet nod of approval, it was enough. Or at least, I thought it was. But over time, something shifted. The requests didn't sound like requests anymore. They came faster, more often. Less appreciation, more expectation. Still, I didn't question it. Why would I? This was what family did, right? I remember one night, standing in the kitchen long after everyone else had gone to bed, staring at a sink full of dishes. My brother's laughter echoed faintly from his room, carefree, untouched. And for the first time, a small, unfamiliar thought crossed my mind. Why does it always have to be me? That question didn't come out loud, but it stayed. And once it was there, it started changing the way I saw things I used to ignore. It showed up in small moments first. At dinner, for example. I would set the table, make sure everything was ready, then sit down last. My brother would already be halfway through his meal, scrolling on his phone, barely looking up. Did you finish your homework? My mom would ask him gently. He'd shrug. Later. She'd sigh, but then smile anyway. Just don't forget. No pressure. No follow-up. Then her eyes would shift to me. Emily, did you call the bank today? I hadn't even taken a bite yet. I will after dinner. A pause. Not long, but enough. You should have done it earlier. Same table. Same conversation. Different rules. I remember watching that exchange, fork frozen in my hand, trying to understand it. He could delay. I had to deliver. He could forget. I had to remember everything. Can you help your brother with his project tonight? My father added casually, not even checking if I had plans. I nodded, like always. Across the table, my brother smirked slightly, not cruel, just used to it. And maybe that was the part that unsettled me most. No one questioned it. Not him. Not them. Not even me. But something inside me started to shift again, quieter this time, more focused. If this was normal, why did it feel so unfair? That feeling didn't disappear. It just got buried, covered by something stronger, something I had been taught to believe long before I could question it. Family comes first. No matter what. It wasn't said once. It was repeated at dinner tables, during arguments, in quiet moments that felt important. My mother would say it gently, like advice. My father said it like a rule. And over time, it stopped sounding like an opinion. It became truth. So whenever something felt off, I didn't challenge it. I adjusted. If my brother needed help, I gave it. If my parents asked for more, I found a way. Because saying no didn't just feel difficult, it felt wrong. Like I was breaking something invisible but essential. Emily, we're a family, my mother reminded me once when I hesitated. We take care of each other. I nodded, even though something inside me resisted for a split second. Then I pushed that feeling down, just like before. That belief made everything easier to accept. It gave meaning to the imbalance. It turned sacrifice into something noble instead of something questionable. But it also did something else, something I didn't notice at the time. It taught me not to ask where the line should be. And years later, standing in that same house, holding that document in my hand, a quiet thought surfaced again, clearer now, harder to ignore. What if that belief was wrong? That question didn't get answered, not then. Life kept moving, and I moved with it, doing what I had always done, stepping in before anyone had to ask. By 16, I had my first job. Nothing glamorous, long shifts, low pay, but it felt like something solid, something I could control. I still remember handing my first paycheck to my mom, trying to sound casual. This should help a little. Her face softened instantly. Emily, you didn't have to do that. But she took it anyway. And I felt proud. It became a rhythm after that. School during the day, work in the evenings, then home to whatever was waiting. Bills, errands, things no one else had time for. I didn't complain. In a strange way, it made me feel needed, like I was finally doing something that mattered. "You're such a good daughter," my father said once, barely looking up from the TV. It wasn't much, but I held on to it longer than I should have. Each paycheck turned into something else. Groceries. Utilities. My brother's school supplies when he forgot to mention them until the last minute. "Can you cover this just for now?" my mom would ask. And I always said yes. Because saying yes felt right. It fit the role I had grown into without noticing. Looking back, it all seemed so natural. So reasonable. But somewhere between those small sacrifices, something else quietly took root, the idea that what I earned wasn't really mine. At first, it didn't feel like anything was wrong. It felt temporary. "Can you lend me a little?" "I'll pay you back next week," my mom said one evening, her tone light, almost casual. I didn't hesitate. Of course. And she did pay it back once. Maybe twice. Just enough to make it feel real, to make it feel like a system, not a pattern. But then things shifted, slowly, almost invisibly. The requests became more frequent. Smaller at first. Then larger. Just until we figure things out. Just this one time. The words changed, but the meaning stayed the same. Repayment, though, that started fading. I noticed it in quiet moments. Scrolling through my bank account late at night, trying to match numbers that didn't quite add up. Thinking, didn't she say she'd return that? I never asked out loud. Not directly. Instead, I waited. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. The topic never came back up, unless it was to ask for more. "Emily, we're a little short this month," my father said one afternoon, not even sitting down. "Can you cover it?" I nodded automatically. "Yeah, sure." Even as something inside me hesitated. Across the room, my brother barely looked up. It didn't concern him. It never did. And that was when the feeling changed, not dramatically, not all at once, but enough to notice. It wasn't help anymore. It was expectation. Still, I told myself it was fine. Families go through phases. Money comes and goes. But late at night, staring at the numbers again, one quiet thought kept returning. If this was just temporary, why did it never end? That question stayed with me longer than I wanted to admit. And little by little, the answer began to show itself, not in one big moment, but in a pattern I could no longer ignore. It wasn't how often they asked. It was how they asked. "Emily, you'll handle it, right?" my mom said one morning, already reaching for her coffee before I even responded. Not "can you?" Not "would you mind?" Just, "you will." I paused, just for a second. "I guess I can." "Good," she replied, like the conversation had already ended before it started. That pause didn't go unnoticed, not by me. It felt small, almost insignificant, but it lingered. Because for the first time, I realized something had shifted. Helping was no longer a choice. It had become part of who I was, at least, who they expected me to be. Later that week, my father left a stack of bills on the counter. No explanation. No discussion. Just there, waiting. I stared at them, my chest tightening slightly. Do you need me to take care of these? He didn't even look up. You always do. Simple. Certain. Final. Across the room, my brother laughed at something on his phone, completely detached from the moment. And suddenly, the room felt different. Not louder. Not harsher. Just clearer. I wasn't stepping in anymore. I was being assigned. The line between helping and owing had disappeared without me noticing. I picked up the bills anyway. Of course I did. But as I held them in my hands, a quiet, persistent thought returned, stronger this time, harder to push away. Why did it never stop? That question didn't fade. It followed me into every decision, every payment, every quiet moment where I told myself just this once more. Except it was never just once. The bills didn't stay small. They grew faster than I expected. Rent when things were tight. Medical expenses that couldn't wait. Credit cards that somehow always needed clearing. Each time, the urgency sounded real. Each time, I stepped in before anyone else had to. Emily, we really need help with this, my mom said one night, her voice softer than usual. I didn't even ask how much. Okay. And that became my pattern. Not asking. Not pausing. Just fixing. I started picking up extra shifts, cutting back on things I used to enjoy. Nights out disappeared. Savings shrink. I told myself it was temporary, something we'd get through together. But together didn't look the way I thought it would. I remember sitting at the kitchen table one evening, a stack of receipts spread out in front of me, calculator blinking as if waiting for me to admit what I already knew. The total didn't scare me anymore. What scared me was how familiar it felt. My father walked past, glancing at the papers. You've got it handled, right? I nodded, even as my shoulders felt heavier than they should. Yeah. No follow-up. No concern. Just assumption. Upstairs, my brother's music played loudly, carefree, untouched by any of it. And somewhere between those moments, something inside me started to wear down, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. I was covering everything. Every major expense, every crisis that came and went like a wave I had to stand against alone. And for the first time, I couldn't ignore how tired I felt. Not just physically, but of being the only one holding it all together. That exhaustion didn't explode all at once. It sharpened my attention. I started noticing things I had overlooked before. Small details. Subtle changes. Like the car. I saw it one afternoon when I pulled into the driveway after a long shift. Sleek. Polished. Definitely new. For a second, I thought I had the wrong house. Then my brother stepped out of it, keys spinning around his finger, completely at ease. I stayed in my seat, watching. Since when do you have that? I asked when I finally walked inside, trying to keep my tone steady. He shrugged, barely looking up. Got a good deal. A good deal. I nodded slowly, but something didn't sit right. Just days ago, my parents had been talking about how tight things were. Bills piling up. Payments overdue. Did Mom and Dad help you with it? I pressed, more carefully this time. Another shrug. Why does it matter? Why does it matter? That answer lingered longer than it should have. Not defensive, just dismissive. Like the question itself was unnecessary. Later that night, I stood by the window, watching the car parked outside under the streetlight, its surface catching every reflection. Clean. Untouched. Expensive. And suddenly, the numbers in my head didn't line up anymore. The bills. The requests. The urgency. None of it matched what I was seeing. I crossed my arms, my thoughts tightening into something more focused, more uncomfortable. If everything was so tight, where did the money really go? That question didn't stay in my head for long. It pushed its way out the next day, quiet at first, but impossible to ignore. I found my mom in the kitchen, going through receipts like nothing had changed. "Can I ask you something?" I said, keeping my voice even. She didn't look up. "Of course." I hesitated for half a second. "Where is all the money going?" That got her attention. Not a full reaction, just a slight pause, a shift in her posture. Then she sighed, like I had just made things harder for no reason. "Emily, why are you suddenly asking questions like this?" "Because things don't add up," I replied, more firmly now. "You said we were struggling. But he just bought a car." Her expression tightened. "So now you're keeping score?" "I'm trying to understand." My father walked in mid-conversation, catching only the tone, not the context. "What's going on?" "Nothing," my mom said quickly. Then, turning back to me, her voice lowered. "You're overthinking this." There it was again. That word. "I don't think I am," I said. "You are," she insisted, sharper this time. "We're doing the best we can. Not everything is your business." "Not your business." I blinked, caught off guard. "It is when I'm paying for it." Silence. Just for a beat. Then my father stepped in. "No one asked you to do all this, Emily." The words landed heavier than they should have. I stared at him. "You didn't have to ask." Another pause. Then a shrug. "Exactly. Simple. Dismissive. Final." And, just like that, the focus shifted from what they were doing to how I was reacting. I felt it then, sharp and unfamiliar, something rising under the surface, no longer just doubt. It wasn't confusion anymore. It was anger, quiet, controlled, but growing. That anger didn't explode, it settled into something quieter, heavier. And with it came a realization I couldn't unsee. It wasn't just what they were doing. It was what they weren't doing. No one ever said thank you anymore. Not when I covered another bill. Not when I stayed up late fixing something they didn't want to deal with. Not even when I quietly solved problems before they could turn into something worse. It all passed like it was expected, like it was normal. One evening, I placed a receipt on the counter after paying off another overdue charge. My mom glanced at it briefly. Good, that needed to be done. That was it. No pause. No acknowledgement. Just the next thing on the list. I stood there a second longer than I should have, waiting for something, anything, but nothing came. Later, my father asked, "Did you take care of the insurance?" "I did," I replied. He nodded once. "All right." Not appreciation. Just confirmation. Across the room, my brother didn't even look up. And somehow, that silence hurt more than any argument. Because it meant this wasn't temporary. It wasn't a phase. This was how they saw me now, not as someone helping, but as someone whose effort didn't need to be recognized at all. I walked away quietly, but the feeling stayed. A dull ache, settling deeper with each moment. If everything I gave could disappear so easily, did it ever really matter to them? That anger didn't settle into certainty. It pulled me in the opposite direction, into doubt. I didn't argue anymore after that. I just nodded, said whatever would end the conversation, and walked away before my voice could betray what I was feeling. But later, alone in my room, the silence felt louder than anything they had said. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing, replaying every word. Selfish. Complaining. That's not how family works. The more I thought about it, the less clear things became. Maybe they were right. The idea slipped in quietly, almost gently. I had been the one stepping in every time. No one forced me. No one signed a contract. I chose to help. Over and over again. So what did that make this? A misunderstanding? Or something worse, something I had created myself without realizing? I pressed my hands together, trying to study the noise in my head. Images kept flashing back. The bills. The car. The way they avoided my questions. The way they turned everything back on me. None of it fit together cleanly. And that was the problem. Because if I couldn't trust what I was seeing, then what was I supposed to believe? My breath slowed, but the tension didn't. It stayed, tight and unresolved, sitting right beneath the surface. And then the question finally surfaced, clear, sharp, impossible to ignore. Am I the problem, or are they? That question didn't stay abstract for long. It started demanding answers, and this time, I didn't push it away. A few days later, I found myself going through old files. Not intentionally at first. Just looking for something small, bank statements, receipts, anything that could make the numbers make sense. But then I saw it. A folder I didn't recognize. Tucked between documents I didn't know. I hesitated before opening it. Just a second. Then I did. Inside were copies of property papers. Official. Stamped. Signed. My eyes moved quickly at first, names, dates, amounts, until they stopped. Because something didn't match. I leaned closer, reading again, slower this time. The house. The one I had been helping pay off for years. The one I thought was partly mine, at least in some way. It wasn't. My father's name. My mother's name. Not mine. I blinked, certain I had missed something. There had to be another page. Another line. Something that explained it. I flipped through everything again. Nothing. My chest tightened, a sharp, sudden pressure I couldn't ignore. That doesn't make sense, I whispered to myself. Because I had paid for it. The deposits. The repairs. The months when they said they couldn't keep up. I remembered every single one. But on paper, I didn't exist. My hands started to shake slightly as I traced the signatures again, as if they might change if I looked long enough. They didn't. And in that moment, something inside me cracked, not loudly, not visibly, but completely. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was proof. That proof didn't sit quietly. It spread fast, relentless, into every memory I had been trying to protect. I stayed there for a long moment, the papers still in my hands, but my mind already racing somewhere else. Back to every conversation. Every "we're struggling." Every time they said they needed me. And suddenly, those moments didn't feel the same anymore. They felt rehearsed. I sank into the chair nearby, my grip tightening on the documents. No, this doesn't just happen, I murmured under my breath. This was planned. Because it had to be. You don't accidentally leave someone off ownership papers while they're paying for everything. You don't forget to mention it year after year. Not unless there's a reason. And the more I thought about it, the clearer that reason became. They needed me to believe I was part of it. Needed me to keep giving without asking too many questions. Needed me right where I was. A slow, cold realization settled in. I wasn't just overlooked. I was positioned. Every word they had said, every reassurance, every dismissal, clicked into place like pieces of something I never wanted to see. You're the responsible one. We're family. We'll figure it out together. Together. The word echoed differently now. Because there was never a together. There was only me and what I could provide. My chest tightened, not from confusion anymore, but from something heavier. The trust one had held onto for years didn't crack this time. It collapsed. That collapse didn't leave space for denial anymore. It pushed me deeper, past the shock, past the anger, into something colder, more precise. I started reading everything again, slower this time, not as someone hoping to be wrong, but as someone preparing to understand how far it went. Page after page, the same pattern repeated. Signatures. Transfers. Agreements I had never seen before. Dates that matched the exact moments I remembered stepping in to help. But this time, the story behind them looked different. I traced one line with my finger, my breath catching slightly. A transfer tied to my account, authorized under my name, but linked to something I didn't recognize. That's not possible, I whispered. I flipped to the next page. Then the next. And then it hit me. It wasn't just the house. It wasn't just the money I had given. It was everything connected to it. Loans, accounts, financial decisions, moving through my name, but never for me. Never with me. I leaned back slowly, the weight of it settling in piece by piece. They hadn't just excluded me. They had replaced me. Used my identity as a bridge, a tool, something to build through, without ever letting me own what was on the other side. My chest tightened again, sharper this time. Not confusion. Not even anger. Just a stark, undeniable realization. If none of it was mine, if every part of it had been redirected, reshaped, reassigned, then what had I actually been working toward all these years? I stared down at the papers, my grip loosening just slightly. Because one question refused to stay quiet. If that wasn't hers, then whose was it? That question didn't fade after I closed the folder. It followed me into every room, every conversation, every glance I thought I understood before. Nothing looked the same anymore. At breakfast the next morning, my mom poured coffee like usual, asking, "Did you sleep okay?" I nodded. Yeah, but this time, I watched her differently. The way she avoided eye contact just a second too long. The way her voice stayed light, almost careful. Across the table, my brother scrolled through his phone, completely relaxed. Untouched. I studied him too. The car. The money. The indifference. "How'd you pay for that?" I asked casually, keeping my tone even. He didn't even look up. "I told you, it's handled." Handled. The word lingered. Vague. Convenient. Later, I passed by my father in the hallway. "We need to talk," I said. He paused, then gave a short nod. "Not now. Not now." Everything felt like that, answers delayed, details blurred, conversations redirected just enough to keep me from seeing the full picture. And for the first time, I didn't brush it off. I tracked it. Every hesitation. Every deflection. Every gap that used to feel normal. Because now it didn't. It felt intentional. A quiet tension settled under everything, steady and persistent. Not loud enough to explode, but too strong to ignore. And the more I paid attention, the clearer one thing became. This wasn't just one lie. It was a system. That realization didn't let me rest. If it was a system, then it had to leave traces, and this time, I was ready to look for them. That night, I sat down with my laptop, the room dim except for the glow of the screen. My bank account opened in front of me, lines of transactions stretching back further than I had ever cared to check before. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Payments I recognized. Transfers I remembered making. But then I slowed down. Scrolled back further. Clicked into details I used to ignore. And that's when the pattern began to show. Amounts that didn't match what I had been told. Transfers labeled vaguely, family support, temporary use, but routed in ways I didn't fully understand. Some led to accounts I didn't recognize at all. I leaned closer, my pulse starting to pick up. "Where did this go?" I whispered, almost to myself. I opened another tab. Then another. Old emails. Digital receipts. Documents I had signed without thinking twice at the time. Each one added a piece. Each one made the picture harder to dismiss. There were moments I paused, hand hovering over the trackpad, tempted to stop. To close everything and go back to not knowing. But I didn't. Instead, I dug deeper. I cross-checked dates. Matched transfers to conversations I could still remember. Every "we're short this month," every "we'll fix it soon." And slowly, the connections tightened. Nothing was random. Nothing was misplaced. It was organized. Carefully. Quietly. My breath grew uneven as the realization settled in, not as a sudden shock this time, but as a steady, rising tension that refused to break. Because the more I uncovered, the more it felt like I had never really seen my own life clearly before. That feeling that I had missed something fundamental didn't go away after that night. If anything, it pushed me toward a decision I had been avoiding. I needed someone who wasn't part of this. Someone who would look at everything without emotion and tell me what it actually meant. That's how I ended up sitting across from a lawyer a few days later, a folder of documents resting on the table between us. My hands were steady on the outside, but inside, everything felt uncertain. "Just walk me through it," he said calmly, flipping open the first page. I nodded. I've been paying for most of my family's expenses for years. But none of this is in my name. He didn't interrupt. Just kept reading. Page after page. Occasionally marking something, occasionally pausing longer than I expected. Each pause made my chest tighten. Finally, he leaned back slightly, his expression more serious now. "Did you authorize these transactions?" "Yes," I answered, then hesitated. "At least. I thought I did." He glanced up. "And these accounts, did you know where the money was going?" A beat passed. "No." Silence settled between us, heavier than before. He closed the folder halfway, tapping it lightly. "Emily, there are a few things here that don't add up." My breath caught. "What do you mean?" He held my gaze this time, no hesitation. "I mean," he said carefully, "this isn't just poor financial management." A pause. Just long enough to feel it. "There's a possibility you've been misled, in a very structured way." That sentence didn't leave room for comfort. It stayed in the air, heavy, precise, and it changed the way I looked at everything in front of me. I swallowed, forcing myself to stay steady. "So, what happens next?" The lawyer didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into the folder, pulling out a separate set of documents I hadn't seen before. Thicker. More detailed. "I need you to look at this," he said, sliding them across the table. My fingers hesitated just above the pages before finally touching them. The paper felt colder than it should have. "What is it?" "Cross-referenced records," he replied. "Linked accounts. Ownership structures. Things that don't usually show up unless you know where to look." My chest tightened as I opened the first page. Lines of information, names, numbers, connections, far more complex than anything I had gone through on my own. I skimmed at first, then slowed down, because certain details stood out immediately. My name, repeated, again and again, but not where it should have been. I looked up, my voice quieter now. "Why is my name here, like this?" He didn't soften his tone. "Because, Emily, this document doesn't just show what happened." A brief pause. Just long enough for the weight to land. "It shows how it was done." That explanation didn't clarify things, it deepened them. My eyes dropped back to the pages, this time not skimming, not searching for reassurance, but bracing for whatever came next. "Start here," the lawyer said, pointing to a section near the top. I followed his finger. A loan agreement. My name was listed as the primary applicant. I frowned immediately. "I never applied for this." He nodded slightly. "Look closer." I did. The signature at the bottom, mine. Or at least, something close enough to pass without question. My stomach tightened. This isn't right. "It's not isolated," he continued, turning the page. Another document. Then another. Different dates. Different amounts. Same pattern. My name attached to obligations I didn't recognize. Accounts I had never opened. Transfers I had never authorized, not knowingly, not fully aware of what they led to. I felt my breath shorten, each page pulling something else out from under me. "This one," he said, tapping lightly, "links to the property you mentioned." I stared at it. Funds routed through multiple accounts, layered, redirected, until they landed exactly where they were meant to go. But I was the one paying, I said, my voice barely holding. You were, he replied. But not in the way you thought. The room felt smaller. Every explanation I had accepted before started collapsing under the weight of what I was seeing now. This wasn't miscommunication. It wasn't confusion. It was design. Carefully built. Step by step. Using my trust. My access. My name. I leaned back, my hands falling still on the table. Because the truth wasn't just exposed, it was undeniable. That undeniable truth didn't just sit there, it ignited something. Not confusion this time. Not doubt. Something sharper. Anger. I leaned forward again, pulling the documents closer as if distance could somehow make them less real. They used my name, I said, the words slow, controlled, but barely. Without telling me. The lawyer didn't interrupt. They signed things, moved money, opened accounts. I flipped another page, faster now, each line hitting harder than the last. All under me. My voice tightened. That's not just manipulation. That's identity misuse, he finished calmly. The word landed heavier than anything else so far. Misuse. I let out a breath that didn't feel like relief. My hands pressed against the table, grounding myself as everything started connecting in a way I couldn't unsee anymore. Just sign this. It's easier if it's under your name. Every moment I trusted without questioning. They hadn't just relied on me. They had rewritten me into their system. I shook my head slightly, disbelief giving way to something hotter, more volatile. They knew exactly what they were doing, I muttered. From what I can see, the lawyer replied, this didn't happen by accident. Of course it didn't. Nothing about this was accidental. I sat back, my jaw tightening, eyes fixed on the papers that no longer felt like documents, but evidence. And beneath the anger, one question kept pushing forward, louder with every second. How far would they go? That question didn't leave me when I walked out of the office. It followed me into the car, into the silence, into the space where I could no longer avoid choosing what to do next. I sat there for a long time, keys still in my hand, staring straight ahead without seeing anything. They're still your family, a voice in my head whispered. Soft. Familiar. I closed my eyes for a second. And what does that mean now? I murmured back, barely audible. Because everything felt split in two. On one side, years of memories. Birthdays. Laughter. Moments that had once felt real, solid, safe. On the other, documents. Proof. Patterns I couldn't unsee. My grip tightened around the steering wheel. Maybe there's an explanation, I tried again, forcing the thought forward. Maybe I misunderstood something. But even as I said it, the images came back. The signatures. The accounts. The way every detail lined up too perfectly to be accidental. My breath grew uneven. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust. Identity. Everything I thought I understood about where I belonged. If I walked away, I would lose them. If I stayed, I already knew what that meant. The tension built, pressing from both sides, leaving no easy space to stand. I leaned back, exhaling slowly, but the pressure didn't ease. Because deep down, one truth was becoming impossible to ignore. No matter what I chose next, something was going to break. That breaking point didn't come from nowhere. It had been building, quietly, steadily, long before I ever saw those documents. Sitting there, I let the memories surface. Not the good ones this time. The ones I used to push aside. Emily, can you just handle it? The words echoed, but now they sounded different. Sharper. Heavier. I saw myself younger, standing in the kitchen, nodding without thinking. I saw the nights I stayed up late, calculating numbers that were never really mine to carry. The times I said yes before I even understood what I was agreeing to. And then the smaller moments came back, the ones I used to ignore. A birthday where I paid for everything, and no one noticed. A weekend I canceled plans to fix a problem that wasn't mine. A quiet thank you I kept waiting for that never came. Why are you making this such a big deal? My mother's voice cut through one memory. Because it never stopped being a big deal. I exhaled slowly, my chest tightening as each moment stacked on top of the next. None of it felt isolated anymore. It was all connected. Every choice I made, every time I stayed silent, every time I chose them over myself. I thought this was what I was supposed to do, I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. But even as I said it, something inside me resisted. Because if it was supposed to feel right, why did it hurt so much now? That pain didn't fade after I acknowledged it, it sharpened. It pushed everything into focus until there was no space left to hide behind old excuses. I opened my eyes slowly, staring at my reflection in the dark window of the car. For a moment, I didn't recognize the person looking back. Not because she had changed overnight, but because she had finally stopped pretending. I can't keep doing this, I said quietly. The words felt unfamiliar at first. Heavy. Real. I waited, almost expecting that familiar voice in my head to argue back, to remind me of everything I owed. But it didn't come this time. Instead, something else settled in. Clarity. I thought about the documents. The signatures. The years of silence that allowed all of it to happen. None of that would change if I walked back inside and acted like nothing was wrong. And that's when I understood something I hadn't been ready to face before. There was no version of this where I could keep them, and keep myself. My hands tightened slightly around the steering wheel, but my mind felt steady for the first time. I'm done, I whispered. Not out of anger. Not out of impulse. But because staying would mean accepting everything I had just uncovered. And I couldn't do that anymore. That decision didn't stay in my head. It moved into action faster than I expected. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. The next morning, I walked back into the lawyer's office, the same folder in my hand, but this time, I didn't hesitate. I want to proceed, I said, my voice steady. He looked up, studying me for a brief second. Are you sure? A pause. Not from doubt, but from finality. Yes. He nodded once, already reaching for his notes. Then we start by securing everything tied to your name. Accounts, assets, liabilities. Nothing moves without your authorization anymore. Hearing that shifted something inside me. For so long, everything had moved without me even realizing. Good, I replied quietly. We went through it step by step. Freezing access. Flagging suspicious transactions. Preparing formal notices. Each action felt precise, controlled, like undoing something that had been tightening around me for years. At one point, he slid a document toward me. This will initiate the legal review. Once filed, it won't stay private. I looked at it. My name at the top. Clear. Undeniable. They'll find out, I said. They will. I picked up the pen, my hand steady this time. No hesitation. No second guessing. Because this wasn't about asking for fairness anymore. It was about taking it back. The consequences didn't take long to surface. It started with a call. Then another. Missed, ignored, repeated. By the time I looked at my phone, the screen was filled with notifications, my mother, my father, even my brother. I didn't answer. Not yet. But the messages kept coming. Emily, what did you do? Why are our accounts restricted? Call me. Now. I exhaled slowly, staring at the screen, feeling the shift without even hearing their voices. Then the door opened. My father stepped inside first, faster than usual, his expression tight. What's going on? He demanded. Behind him, my mother followed, her voice already rising. The bank just called us. They said there's a hold on everything. Everything. I stayed where I was, not moving, not reacting the way I used to. My brother looked between us, confusion turning quickly into frustration. Did you do this? I met his eyes. Yes. The word landed hard. What do you mean yes? My mother snapped, stepping closer. Why would you do something like this? Because it's under my name, I replied, my voice steady despite the chaos building around me. For a second, no one spoke. Then everything unraveled at once. That's not what this is about. You're overreacting, fix it. Right now. Voices overlapping. Panic rising. But this time, I didn't step in to calm it. I just watched. Because for the first time, they were the ones losing control. That loss of control shifted the entire room, and for once, I didn't feel pulled into it. I stood still, letting their voices rise and overlap without stepping in to fix anything. Say something, my mother demanded, her tone sharp, almost desperate now. I did, but not the way they expected. I already did, I replied quietly. The words didn't cut through the noise, they stopped it. My father frowned. What is that supposed to mean? It means, I continued, my voice calm, measured, everything that was under my name is now under my control. A pause. Heavy. My brother scoffed, trying to regain footing. You're acting like this is some kind of game. I looked at him steady. It was never a game for me. Silence followed that, short, but enough to settle something deeper. My mother stepped closer, lowering her voice as if that would change the outcome. Emily, we can talk about this. You don't have to do this. I held her gaze. I already did. No anger. No raised voice. Just clarity. Because for the first time, I wasn't reacting to them. I wasn't explaining myself. I wasn't asking for understanding. I was setting terms. And they could feel it. Every shift in my tone, every word I chose, it wasn't emotional anymore. It was final. That final shift didn't need to be loud to be powerful. It settled into the room like something undeniable, something none of them could argue away this time. My father exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Emily, you're taking this too far. I tilted my head slightly. Too far? A small pause, just enough. I've been paying for everything for years, I continued, my tone even. Under my name. Without full information. Without real consent. No one interrupted. My mother's expression changed, not anger this time, but something closer to realization. Or maybe fear. We were going to fix it, she said, softer now. When? I asked. Silence answered for her. I stepped closer to the table, placing the copies of the documents down, this time not as a question, but as evidence. Final. It's already been filed, I added. That landed. Hard. My brother straightened. Filed? What do you mean filed? I said, meeting each of their eyes one by one. Everything is under legal review now. Every account. Every transaction. Every signature. The room didn't explode this time. It collapsed inward. Because there was nothing left to deny. For years, I had carried the weight quietly, fixing what no one else would even acknowledge. Now, for the first time, that weight wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs. And as the silence stretched between us, heavy but clear, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. This wasn't revenge. This was balance. That balance didn't come with relief, it came with exposure. And once everything was laid out, there was nowhere left for them to hide. My father was the first to break. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet shift as he sank into the chair, his confidence gone. This isn't necessary, he muttered, but even he didn't sound convinced. My mother didn't argue this time. Her eyes moved between the documents and me, searching for something, an opening, a way to regain control. But there wasn't one. We didn't think it would go this far, she said, almost to herself. I held her gaze. It already did. Across the room, my brother looked different now. The ease, the casual indifference, it had disappeared. "So what happens now?" he asked, his voice lower, uncertain. That question lingered longer than it should have. Because for the first time, they were the ones waiting. Not assuming. Not demanding. Just waiting. I didn't rush to answer. I let the silence sit, let it stretch just enough for them to feel it, the same weight I had carried for years. "No one is fixing this for you," I said finally. No anger. No emphasis. Just truth. And that was the moment it settled in for them. Not through shouting. Not through conflict. But through the realization that everything they had built was no longer protected. That realization didn't need anything else from me. No final argument. No last explanation. The room had already said everything that mattered. I took a slow breath, letting it settle, not the tension this time, but the absence of it. It felt unfamiliar at first. Lighter, but real. My mother's voice followed softly, almost hesitant. "Emily, wait." I paused, just for a second, my hand resting on the door. But I didn't turn around. "I've done enough," I said, not loudly, not coldly, just clearly. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. Because for the first time, I wasn't staying to be understood. I wasn't waiting for them to change. I wasn't hoping for something that had never really been there. I opened the door. The air outside felt different. Quieter. Not because the world had changed, but because something inside me finally had. Behind me, no one stopped me. No one knew how. And as I stepped forward, leaving that space, that history, that version of myself behind, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't walking away from them. I was finally walking toward myself. And, just like that, it was over for her. But maybe not for you. Because now that you've seen everything, every sacrifice, every lie, every moment she chose them over herself, there's one question that refuses to stay quiet. What would you do? Be honest. Don't answer too fast. Because it's easy to say, walk away, when you're not the one who built your entire life around them. It's easy to say, forgive, when you're not the one who was used, signed into debts you didn't agree to, erased from everything you paid for. So think about it. Really think. If you were standing in her place, holding that document, knowing the truth, would you forgive them? Or would you destroy everything they built using you? There's no middle ground here. You either believe family deserves a second chance, no matter how far they went, or you believe some lines, once crossed, can never be undone. So choose. Backhand index pointing down, team forgive. It's still family. People make mistakes. Fire team cut off. They knew exactly what they were doing. And don't just pick a side, tell me why. What matters more to you, blood or boundaries? Because this story isn't rare. And your answer? It says more about you than you think.